Hello everybody and welcome. My name is Julie Mann and I show men and women how they can create healthy, happy, sustainable lives. And I'm really delighted because today I'm joined by Lynette Norris. Hi Lynette.
Hi Julie, hi. Nice to be here.
Really great to see you. Now for those of you that don't yet know Lynette, she works as a homeopath and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that. But I think it'd be really great, Lynette, to start with your, well, really from the very beginning, and for you to tell us a little bit about your childhood. What kind of home did you grow up in? You know, what were the values that you were instilled with? Yeah.
Okay, so I grew up in Watford, which is in northwest London, and there wasn't a lot of money around when I was a kid. So it was, we lived in quite a poor area, and my parents had both had quite a difficult start in life themselves. And as we grew up, their marriage got more difficult. So, there were a lot of challenges at home. It was, quite a sort of unhappy place at times. But it was also a very happy place at other times. And I've got a brother and sister, and we formed a really nice little unit together. And so, our sort of love for each other and our ability to play with each other really sustained us throughout our childhood, I think.
Wow, brilliant. So what kind of beliefs did you grow up with? Some perhaps that were really great and others that weren't so great because of the environment you grew up in.
Yeah, so I think that they were good and bad, like you say. And I think the great thing was that both my parents worked incredibly hard. And they really instilled in us that we had to work hard. We really did. And especially my dad was very, very keen for my education, particularly. And so good and bad, he was always, encouraging me. But sometimes that encouragement may have got a little bit too much. So really it was work, 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 and not so much looking after yourself. I think that might have been the more limiting belief, is like, you have to work hard at all costs. And my mum actually was a very sociable and caring person in the community. So what I do remember from my childhood is that she really looked after people in our street. So elderly neighbours, people who, weren't getting things together for whatever reason. My mum was a real force in the community. Despite her own issues at home, she still managed to get out there and do things for other people. So that was inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened when you left home?
Okay, so I left home. I was the first person in my family to go to university. And so I left home, and guess what? Work. Worked really hard. I mean, I loved it at school. I loved books. And I went first to Leeds University, then to Sussex. And I was just immersed in my work. I was also immersed, as a lot of young people are, in partying very hard and enjoying myself. And I think when I look back on that, I think I just had no off switch. It was like, get up in the morning, go. And so I did pretty well at uni, and while I was there I did a lot of filming. Part of my degree was we had access to a film studio, and so when I actually left uni, I started filming. I started doing any kind of filming that I could. I was filming bands myself on Super 8 cameras, got to know a lot of people, did a lot of free films, sort of low budget films, and slowly but surely worked my way into the film industry. So for the next 15 years, I went to film school at Beaconsfield. And for the next 15 years, I worked as a producer and a production manager on lots of different shows, feature films. I produced pop promos for several years. I worked on comedy, entertainment, reality shows, hidden camera shows. Then I kind of became more like a kind of development producer. So I was pitching program ideas. So I really, in that 15 years, I did a lot, and I worked really hard. But I really enjoyed it as well. And what I enjoy so much about filming is being with a group of people, and you have a common aim. You're all working on something together. And as the production manager, I would have a bit of an input into every single department. So you have an oversight of what's going on. So it's the logistics, it's the script, it's the actors, camera, every department So that's what I really enjoyed, was this kind of oversight, and being involved with all those people. Really good fun, really stimulating. Yeah, great stuff.
Sounds really, really exciting, but it also sounds like it's quite a pressurized environment. Time is money, filming costs a lot of money, doesn't it? And a lot of film ends up on the cutting room floor, so it's quite a responsible position that you were in.
Yes, very much. And I think because of that background that I've described of, work, 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 you must take the responsibility. I really did take the responsibility, and that's what made me good at my job. But it also made it, as you say, a pressurizing environment. And it's one that's very prone to burnout, because 6-day week, starting at 3:30 a.m., not getting home till 11. Once I had my daughter when I was 32, and I still carried on filming in that way. And I very quickly realized that was not sustainable. You can't really, unless you have like a full-time nanny, and I didn't really want that. So the next stage for me was I bought a shop and started my own business, and thought it would be a lot less pressurizing and a lot more sort of sustainable in terms of work-life balance. And it was a fancy dress shop. It was a kind of incredible turnaround from, being out all day filming and in lovely offices and traveling all over the world, to being in central Brighton in my fancy dress shop, dressing the people of Brighton for all their parties. It was quite a change.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I remember, I didn't actually know that you owned that shop, but I certainly went in a number of times and hired stuff and bought stuff. And I thought it was amazing. It was just such an exciting shop to be in. But what made you, I mean, obviously I imagine that you wanted something that was closer to home so you could be with your daughter, but it was such a switch from what you did before. What was it about that appealed, apart from the fact it was more on your doorstep?
Yeah, so obviously that was a big factor, it being on the doorstep and it being sustainable. But also I think the pressure in filming, especially if you're a production manager, is that really the buck stops with you as far as the budget. It is a big responsibility. Everyone is depending on you to get it right. And if you don't get it right, then, quite often you get the blame. So obviously my own business, I thought, well, I'm not going to get the blame from anyone because I'm going to be in charge. So that was what attracted me to that. And also, I mean, just, a fancy dress shop in Brighton. Brighton is the party town. So many events on the calendar, where people want to dress up. Halloween obviously was the big one, Christmas as well, Pride, really big parties. And, just this incredible Mr. Ben style sense of achievement where someone comes in like, oh, I've got a party to go to. And then by the time they leave, they're all decked out in, fabulous costumes. So it was really fun for a long time. It was really fun. And although I'd had fun on film sets, that responsibility had kind of ground me down a little bit, I think. So yeah, I was in charge and I didn't have anyone looking over my shoulder. That was enjoyable.
But then the fun stopped, didn't it?
Yes,
Tell us
it
about
did.
that.
So the fun stopped. I mean, I bought the shop just before the recession in 2008. So there was this, trajectory of super fun. And then, when people's money ran out, the fun stopped because, as we all know about the high street now, rates, wages, rent, etc., it's very difficult to run an independent shop and be successful. And, unfortunately, even now when I walk around in Brighton, so many shops have closed over the course of the pandemic. And it's really tragic to me to see all those independent shops without having had any sort of help or support. So yeah, the fun did stop because, weirdly, then, of course, I felt the same pressure, and it was the same kind of pressure. It was the budget wasn't working, the logistics weren't working, the pressure did get on top of me, and it got on top of the shop. So I was forced to close the shop because I just couldn't carry on with it anymore. It just, when the takings go down and the costs go up, it's game over basically.
So what was that like
for
you though, Lynette? Going through that when you had this vision of it, where of course it was thriving at one point and then suddenly getting to the stage where, like you say, it wasn't viable. I imagine, you know, when you've created this baby, this amazing project that was fun at one time, and then it stops being that it must have been a deeply challenging time for you.
It really was, because over the years of the lease, it really was that old kind of frog in boiling water thing. It was like it was getting progressively worse, but because I was in the middle of it and trying to make it work, I didn't quite realize how bad it was or the effect it was having on me. So then when the shop actually finally came to an end, I had this kind of, well, I wouldn't call it cataclysm, but it was like I lost the business. Consequently, I lost my house. And at the same time, I had a really challenging health issue came up as well. And so just everything seemed to, you know, collapse at exactly the same moment. So yeah, the effect on me was quite profound. I mean, it was one of, I'd had quite a few health issues throughout my life. And each time I'd kind of got over the health issue and then gone back to my old normal and kind of carried on. That this was different because I had, in my 20s, I had a big health issue after my finals. So I'd worked really hard and then I crashed. It was burnout time. And that's when I found homeopathy. And then somehow in my filming and throughout all of that, I had kind of lost home. I did use homeopathy for my daughter when she was a baby. I used homeopathy when I was in labour. I only had homeopathy, nothing else. And so I'd remembered it all that time, but somehow I'd lost those kind of principles. Anyway, when the shop finished and then I had this big health crash, for a while, I was in absolute panic and free fall, as most, you know, a lot of people are when you get a bad news diagnosis. But I just suddenly remembered homeopathy and it just changed everything, because I used homeopathy. It was very successful. And at that point, in fact, just before that, I'd already decided to train as a homeopath. As I saw the shop coming to an end, I thought, what would I like to do? And I really did want to train as a homeopath. But that health issue crystallized it so much. So I went from being really down to utilizing homeopathy, and really the colleagues that I met through homeopathy, it took me on another completely different direction. So talk about pivoting, you know, it's like doing the twist. I love a pivot, me.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that health issue is? Because, or
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, well,
I think that might be useful for people who are watching.
It's a very strange health issue, actually, because it's a lot of women, when they have a mammogram, are told that they have cancer, and it's something that's called DCIS. It's ductal carcinoma in situ, and it's something that may never amount to anything. It may never become cancerous, but at the moment, the way that they treat it is they treat it as if it is cancer. So you have lumpectomy, chemotherapy, or mastectomy, radiotherapy, the whole shebang. And in the last 10 years, they've been doing a trial to try and assess whether this DCIS is actually ever going to go on to become anything. And at the moment, they still don't know. I don't think it's called the Loris trial, and it hasn't actually finished yet. So yes, it's shocking. It was very shocking to be told literally in the same office. I had two people. There was the consultant and the Macmillan nurse. And so he said to me, "This is not cancer. You know, you don't need to worry about that. This is not cancer in the form that we know it." And then the Macmillan nurse took me outside and said, "Well, I'm sorry, but it is cancer." So I had this peculiar, strange diagnosis that happened. And of course, a cancer diagnosis is extremely traumatic. But, really that was even weirder, because it was just so confusing. I just didn't know what to do. So I opted for homeopathy in a natural way, and a kind of watch and wait. That's what I opted for. So I'm not saying that homeopathy cures cancer. I'm not saying that I used it for that. I used it to get myself as healthy as I could be. Obviously, I'd come through quite an ordeal with the shop and all of that stuff, and I really was kind of on my knees health-wise. But so I just used everything at my disposal to get myself into as good a shape as I possibly could. And that's where I am now, really. It's like having come over the hump of that, as it were, now feeling very fit, very well, and just glad that I took a slightly alternative turn, because I think when you get a diagnosis like that and they offer you what's in their arsenal, quite often you feel like you absolutely have to agree and that you have to do that, and to not do that is foolish. But I felt, what's the word, supported by just getting my body into as good a shape as it possibly could be. So, and by my colleagues, and by the road that I was taking by then. So
did the Macmillan nurse think you were mad and foolish to do what you did, or did you didn't feel judged or in any way?
No, to their credit, actually, everyone no one ever put any pressure on me to do anything. And I think that was, it would have been very different if I'd had, if it was at a different stage or something like that. But because there's this big question mark over this problem, I don't think they really felt like they could pressurize me into anything. So all credit, really. They just accepted my decision, and left it at that. But obviously with further support, should I need it. So I'm grateful for that. That was I didn't get any pressure. So yeah, that was good.
Good. So for people who don't really know much, if anything, about homeopathy, Lynette, how would you describe it in a nutshell, in layman's terms?
Okay, well, I think a lot of people confuse homeopathy with herbalism, and it is not herbalism, and not all homeopathic remedies come from herbs. It's a very sophisticated and elegant form of energy medicine, where in a healthy person, if the remedy was in its gross form, in its material form, in a healthy person, it would cause the symptoms that we are looking to cure with a homeopathic remedy in a sick person, or a person who has those symptoms. So we're matching the remedy to the person, hopefully with a really good match, and by the sort of idea of like cures like, the remedy will make so if the body, when it's ill, has its clock down here on the side and it should be up here, by using the remedies we're pushing the body's vital force up until it's back into balance. And the idea is that the body always wants to be in balance, and the symptoms that it shows you are a way of showing you where you need to go to get help. The body's so sophisticated, it's such an amazing healing organism. And also with homeopathy, it's not just, I think when you go to the doctor, you've got a rash, they give you a cream, it's specific for that rash, you put it on and the rash hopefully goes away. In homeopathy, we look at the whole person. We're treating the whole person, not the rash. So in a homeopathic session, I would be asking you everything about yourself, from the moment you were born, all the ailments you've ever had, your psychological background, what kind of food you like to eat, what position you lie in bed, and more importantly, when life throws things at you, how you are as a person, how you deal with things as a person. And I think it's taken me many, many years to realize what an incredible diversity of reactions people have. I mean, I don't know whether everyone feels like this, but I think when I was younger, I used to think that people broadly behaved in the same way as me or thought in the same way. And now I'm older and wiser, I realize no, people have myriad ways of reacting to things. So we have over 4,000 remedies. And it really is a case of being a kind of detective, I suppose, going in there and being very, non-judgmental, and just asking that person everything about themselves and getting this great rapport going so that I can then match the remedy to the person.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love homeopathy, and I've been used a number of times on my daughter when she was younger because she had eczema. And I know you can't make any claims, Lynette, you don't do that. But, in my experience with her, she doesn't suffer from any eczema anymore. And also, when I was breastfeeding, I had mastitis. And the first time I used antibiotics, and it took ages to clear up. And the second and third time I had it, I used homeopathy. It was much quicker. And you know, personally,
yeah, homeopathy really is
personally, I don't like taking antibiotics.
Wonderful in treating.
You've frozen. Come back, Lynette. All is forgiven. I hope that your internet connection is. Here we go.
There we go. I'm back. Back, baby. Yeah. I mean, homeopathy has just helped me so much throughout my life. I mean, as I said, when I first used it, I was 22, and I'd had a kidney infection that went on for over a year. And every month I went back to the doctor, and every month I had another round of antibiotics. So by the end of that time, I'd had 13 rounds of antibiotics. I was on my knees. My stomach was a mess. I was so weak. And someone said to me, "Oh, I know a homeopath." And I must be honest, I didn't know what homeopathy was, but I just thought I just need to do something. So I went to a homeopath, a wonderful homeopath in Brighton, who I still know. And not only did she treat me beautifully with homeopathy, but she also said something that I've just held with me for the rest of my life, which is, she said, "Well, you need to rest. You need a really good rest. I want you to go home, go to bed. I want you to get your friends and your boyfriend to bring you soup, to bring you food. You can get up to go to the toilet and have a wash. But apart from that, I want you to stay in bed for a whole week." And this was absolutely revolutionary to me. I mean, I was like, rest? What do you mean rest? You know, that was crazy talk. So yeah, just that idea of resting and letting the body do what it naturally wants to do to heal itself. That's where homeopathy comes into its own. It's just, yeah, it's kind medicine. That's what I think.
I imagine that you might have experienced your father's voice saying, no, you've got to work really hard.
Precisely. What are you doing lying in bed? You've got to get up. You know, you've got to make your living. What are you doing? Okay. So yeah, and
you and I are all for homeopathy, and there will be people watching who they just can't get their head around it, and because they can't understand it, it's not logical. They're really skeptical. So what would you say to people like that?
Well, I would say to anyone who is skeptical, you know, of course, you're entitled to your own beliefs. And of course, you know, sometimes people will say, well, I can't see the hard science behind it. I mean, there are a lot of Cochrane reviews, you know, that's the gold standard for science that have, you know, really brilliantly proven how homeopathic remedies work for people. We may not know the exact mechanism of how it works, but I mean, there are lots of drugs within, you know, the National Health Service where they don't actually understand how they work. They just know that they do. And that's what evidence-based medicine is. And I would say, personally speaking, that my evidence for homeopathy is how it's worked so well, both for me, for my daughter when she was a baby, and now as a homeopath, obviously I see people all the time, and it works brilliantly for people. I mean, one of my great early successes, which I was just so thrilled about, was I was treating a woman in her 60s, and she had had a migraine every week of her life since she was 9 years old. And really, she was floored by this, and she just had to take herself to bed every week. She would be being sick. She had to lie in a darkened room. 1 week of remedies, no more migraines. And that, I mean, that's miraculous. You know, it worked so fast. And yeah, they do say, you know, in your early years of homeopathy, you often get some great wins, you know, just and that, you know, so that's making a difference to somebody's life. And you can be skeptical, you can talk about placebo, you know, in a way, does the mechanism matter? Because actually I just see great results for people all the time. And, you know, I specialize in fatigue, insomnia, and stress for obvious reasons. I've been through all that myself, you know, so much. And I see really great results for people, especially very intractable insomnia. So, you know, I would say it's a bit like when I turn the light on in my house. I don't understand how electricity works, but the light comes on, and that's what matters. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Nothing worse than being sleep deprived, is there? You know, I mean,
Absolutely.
it's a form of torture, isn't
Yeah,
it? It's just, yeah, horrible.
it is.
But
Yeah.
in terms of habits, Lynette,
Mm. Mm.
during your life, what would you say are the habits that you've implemented that really
Mm.
work for you ongoingly?
Well, something I suppose, the habits that worked brilliantly are healthy eating, obviously. I mean, I don't always eat healthily, I'm guilty of having the odd bar of chocolate, of course, but generally speaking, quite healthy eating. I used, in my 20s, my teens and 20s, I was an incredible boozer, and I did really, stop that, because I realized that wasn't helping me emotionally or physically. I mean, I wouldn't say to everyone give up drinking, but that's just what worked for me. And then more recently, in the past few years, the thing that's made a huge difference to my life is doing a breathing exercise every day, and then being able to call on that at times of stress, times of insomnia, times of just feeling a bit overwhelmed. It's this brilliant, free, easy thing that you can do even if you're standing in a crowd or on a tube train. Breathing exercises and meditation for me have brought this measure of sort of peace and calm to my life. It's just been excellent. So like a very simple breathing exercise that you can learn in, say, 2 minutes can radically change your life. Oh, and breathing through your nose, not your mouth. that's a habit that I highly endorse. So yeah.
Brilliant.
Mm.
What do you do when you're
And
not
drinking
working?
lots of water.
Yes, absolutely. What do you do when you're not working, Lynette?
Well, I've got a quite a big garden that's very unruly, and I spend a lot of time trying to get that into shape. I've got a dog who I love, and I just adore walking, out in the countryside. And obviously live by the sea, so that's a great thing to, we've got such beautiful countryside around here, can walk anywhere. And yeah, the thing that stayed with me since I was a child, which I love, is reading. I love reading in all its forms. I really
What are you
do.
reading now?
I'm actually reading one book called Breath by a journalist called James Nestor. So I'm really into looking at different breathing techniques at the moment. And I'm also reading the second book of, I don't know if you've read The Salt Path by Raina Wynn. So there's a second book, The Silent Wilderness. I recommend The Salt Path for anybody. It's a great book about overcoming adversity and getting in touch with the natural world as a healing tool. It's excellent.
Love it. One final question. When you're no longer on this planet, how would you like to be remembered?
I think, well, like everyone, probably want to be remembered as someone who made a difference to people's lives. But I would love to be remembered as someone who listened deeply to people who had a desire to get well and facilitated that in some shape or form. That would be my wish, that people would have had successes with their health and remember and think, oh yes, that was so helpful.
Brilliant.
Mm.
It's been really wonderful talking to you, Lynette.
You too, Julie.
So very much. So everyone, please check out Lynette Norris's links, which will be below this video. But all there is for me to say is, Lynette Norris, thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Julie. It's been really a real pleasure. Thank you.